Hello, everyone. Welcome. All right. I think I have figured out how to do this live stream, and I hope some of you, if you're here, you can give me a sign that I am actually live and not just talking to myself. Um, I'll start. The title is There Not a Brave Man Among Us? It is from a sonnet, 16th century sonnet by one of the great Spanish poets, writers of the 16th century. Quevedo, and he's writing to the Count Duke of Olivares, who was persecuting him because of all his satires. And he ends one sonnet by saying, is there not a brave man among us? Can there not be a brave man among us? Must we always feel what we say? Can't we just say what we feel? I was listening to a chat given by another Spanish writer, as a matter of fact, a great writer, Juan Manuel de Prada, this is a talk given about, a long time ago, 6-7 years ago, something like that, about the world today, about how we are feeling, and he was obviously anticipating this. And I want to talk about our how we are fitting or not fitting in the world today, hopefully with a little grain of hope here, with a little bit of an alternative, and talking about the importance of tradition and perhaps the need for us to consider leading different lives. And he says things like this. I took some notes. We all have, of course, our life experience, our own experience of what life is, what we ourselves have experienced, but also in a broader sense. We carry also with us what our ancestors have also lived and experienced and left for us and passed on, however much we may or may not be aware of it. Those who are no longer with us but have left in our history, in our culture, their contribution, their own experiences. And our own life is also influenced by not only us, what we do, but those around us. We know that, what we have read, the people we have met, the places we have been to. And we also know that life is never what we would like it to be. It seems as if we have within us somehow a certain feeling for a, shall I say, nostalgia of something else, perhaps of paradise. We would like this life to be a bed of roses, and we know it is not. There is an old Catholic prayer, the Salve, I don't think very many people say it today, referring to life as this valley of tears. Okay, it's a little bit dramatic, you might think, but it is a very wise expression. So let us first talk about happiness. What we mean by happiness. This concept of happiness that throughout human history has undergone very many intellectual theories, approaches, and people have attempted to define it in many different ways. The most beautiful have been linked to these philosophical traditions of how poets have sung of happiness. In ancient times, for example, Horace, in his beautiful composition, Beatus Ille, happy he who, Okay, but this idea has suffered a horrendous shock, a change in the modern world. about what happiness is. It is written there in the American Declaration of Independence, legally written. Yes, an official document. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want you to think about this, the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness as a human right, as one of the basic rights of a human being, this pursuit of happiness. I know I'm going to shock you perhaps, but I consider this almost a cruel trick played on our psyche. I know that they probably meant well. Perhaps they meant a right to be left alone for each one of us to conduct our lives, his, her life, the way he seems fit. Whatever gives you happiness, meaning whatever gives you satisfaction, whatever gives you pleasure, your own thing, yeah? I still think that they should have been a little bit more careful with the word happiness, the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness. It sounds like a search for a golden treasure. We don't even know what happiness is. And there we're going, it's pursuit. Let's find happiness, pursue happiness. Go on, spend your life pursuing happiness. A piece of cake, this. One of the greatest monstrosities of modern ideologies is that they transmit to human beings this sense of power, or perhaps let us use the new word, empowerment. Empowerment. So there you are, empowered in pursuit of happiness. Go ahead, my dear, go ahead, pursue, go ahead, pursue it. I think this is almost a monstrous vision of life. Why? Because when we are told to pursue, I went to the thesaurus. Said, okay, give me other synonyms of pursue. To go after, to run after, to chase, to follow, to give chase to hunt, to track, to trail, to shadow. Okay. Fine. But what all these words have in common is that there is something outside of yourself that you are after. You are following something, pursuing something that you need to get. Of course, sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. But it is assumed that it is something out there, outside of yourself, something that you need to attain. And this is here applied to happiness. I think it's pie in the sky, a pipe dream. Something that no one quite knows what it is, but it is certainly something that we all yearn for. We all yearn for it, and here is the trick and perhaps the deceit. Something we all yearn for. We seem to have this, and we do, and we seem to have this built-in thing about the perfect life, about paradise, let's say. We have this built-in capacity as a species, and we all want this paradise. And we don't realize that this is not possible here on earth. And because it is not possible, and we know it, we know it intimately. So what we do is to want to bring paradise here to us, to earth, to our own lives. And that leads us to the most extraordinary aberrations, especially against ourselves. One of the things I have noticed in my life as a teacher, teaching different subjects at different levels, was to have to deal with students, some of them very apt, and many very, very clever, but others not best equipped for an intellectual career, an intellectual life, let's say. They would have been much happier and more successful, perhaps, devoting their efforts to something else, but not necessarily political philosophy, for example. And I was listening to this writer who was addressing this, and he was saying people would be writers, people who want to be writers, young people, but not necessarily just young people, adults too. They would send manuscripts to this famous author, okay? And perhaps this is in his case, perhaps in your profession, you have people, if you're successful, you have people asking you, writing to you, how can I do this? How can I pursue this? Hearing from people who yearn to do the same as you. And somehow, let's say that in your profession, you realize that they are not equipped to follow that same road. In the case of those young people, not so young, as I said, wanting to become writers and sending their manuscripts, he said, sometimes I find absolutely horrible, bad writing. And he said, and I think, my goodness, this young man doesn't realize that this is not his calling, writing. And you wonder, how did he ever get into his head that he should be a writer? Or who put it in his head that he actually had a literary vocation? And this sentence in the Declaration of Independence, and that it is part already of the genetic, it has become part of the genetic DNA of the modern world, the pursuit of happiness. And it tells people that they can, through sheer affirmation of the will, we ourselves can construct our own life, our own biography. Yes, but not entirely. Yes, we decide what to do and what we choose not to do. But there are many other forces there. You are not the only one influencing your own life. You're not the only one here. We are not an atom. We are not a meteorite that has landed on Earth from a misty and inexplicable origin. And that from nothing outside of us, we can construct our own life. So we can get up, we think one day and say, I want to be a famous celebrity. I want to be a famous lawyer. I want to be a well-paid model. If I imagine, I think I would be insane if I woke up tomorrow and decided I wanted to be a basketball player. Because I can't. Or someone to become a famous writer. Why? Because, or me, because I like to read. So I'm going to put my happiness there in achieving that. But because that might not be my talent. It is not something that I am. It is not my vocation to follow. That is not what I have a call for. I don't have that gift. If I don't come to realize that I don't have it, I will be the most bitter person on the face of the earth if I don't achieve it. I have no aptitude for that. So what do? I have not that gift. Okay, so you can have that dream at the age of 20. You can have that yearning at the age of 20. But if you persist on that without facing reality, at 30, you would be frustrated, disappointed, feeling like a loser, as they say. But at 40 or 50, you will be bitter, resentful of life, perhaps, hateful sometimes, because you haven't fulfilled that dream. It is dangerous, those exhortations that you hear so many times. Encouragements, they say, be yourself, fulfill your dreams, make your dreams a reality. And you keep pursuing what you're not called for which you have no talent. And that will lead you not only to failure, but to bitterness. Sometimes a sad bitterness, sometimes a hateful bitterness, leading perhaps to self-hatred, that since you are not able or capable or willing to confess that to yourself, you're going to project that onto others, that hatred. And it will lead you to melancholy and now called depression, because you finally realize that you've thrown your best years into the trash. It was a chimera, an illusion. It's like a worm that got into your brain and destroyed you inwardly. It deconfigured you. But less dramatically, another example. You get up in the morning and you say, I want to go on vacation this year to an exotic place, to Thailand, to Acapulco, to the island of Bora Bora. Okay, why? How, I'm just asking, how did you get into your head to go to Bora Bora? Did that come from you? Really? I need to go to Bora Bora. Bora Bora? I put it to you that you are home eating your breakfast and suddenly you come out with this. I want to go to Bora Bora. How did that enter your head? It didn't come from you. That's an idea that someone else put in your head. The commercials, the advertisements, the propaganda with which they are destroying you, unraveling your sanity, putting in your head illusions and chimeras that are not part of you, part of your life. Perhaps they are using, never mind who's they, you can imagine who they is. Perhaps they are using, perhaps they are appealing, they are manipulating those beautiful nostalgias that you have. Maybe what's there at the back of your mind is that nostalgia, that time past, when you were perhaps a teenager, an adolescent, sat by the riverbank there or at the foot of a hill, there in your little town where you're from. And who knows, perhaps That is when you kissed for the first time that beautiful girl you were in love with. And that was your first kiss. And how old were you then? 14, 15, perhaps 10. And you stole that first kiss from that beautiful girl. How old was he? Was she 12? Perhaps going on 13? I was big. And for some reason you were wondering one day where she might be now, what happened to her. Remember that moment of ultimate bliss at the age of 10 when you stole that kiss? And you're thinking of that, came to your mind for some reason. And then what happens is that you are there in front of the television set one day, and you're being shown these beautiful beaches in Bora Bora. And so you get up the next day and you say, I have to go to Bora Bora. No, you don't need to go to Bora Bora. What you need to do is most probably to go to that same spot, if you want to go anywhere, that spot in your village, in your little town by the riverbank there, and perhaps remember and relive that moment. And it will fill your soul, if only for a few seconds. But not in Bora Bora. What have you lost there? Okay, so they have degraded the truth that is in you. They have introduced something. It's a business, it's for profit, that's fine, nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong. But it has nothing to do with you and your memories. And they have managed to put this graft into your brain or your soul that has nothing to do with you, with who you are. How do they manage to do this to us? Because they've managed to put into our heads and our souls a pipe dream, something that is not in us. And so they managed to turn us into some scatterbrains, children following the Pied Piper of Hamelin. The only possible happiness is that harmony between what we are and what we do, which is really the classical definition of happiness. There is no other kind. And for that harmony to be possible, the first thing we have to do is to know who we are. To know who we are. And to reconcile ourselves with who we are and what we are. To reconcile ourselves with ourselves. And after we know ourselves, let us see what our natural inclinations are, our talents are. One of the worst things, and where we can see most evidently, visibly, this anthropological destruction, is what is being done to our societies. Look, for example, you're not going to agree with this, I'm almost sure, but hear me out. A friend of yours who used to have a small shop in the town center in your town. It could be a grocery shop or a hairdresser's or a farmer. And he tells you, sometimes with sorrow, sometimes happily, that no, his son doesn't want to inherit the business, his business. No, he doesn't want to follow on his footsteps. He doesn't want to take over the shop or the farm. He's, bigger fish to fry. Okay. Now, for the longest time, and I don't want to take you back to Noah, but look, for the longest time in the history of humanity, that's what we did. Oh, already I can see, but now we are free. We were not free. Now we are free to do what we want. Yes, all right. Throughout the history of mankind, when your parents, not your parents, but when our parents were farmers, you knew you were going to be a farmer. When one was the son of a king, he knew he was going to be king. But all right, but allow me to say that the beautiful thing about a natural society is that even within this very strong sense of tradition present, when you inherited your parents' way of life, the community nevertheless had mechanisms, alarm mechanisms, as it were, that if the farmer's son was a very good poet, they would take him to the podium there during the village celebrations or whatever, and give him the limelight to recite one of his poems, and perhaps, who knows, off he would go, and he would be allowed to perhaps even go to the big city or whatever to pursue his talents there. No one was against that. It's not that they closeted you, chained to the farm. There were mechanisms for you to pursue other things. And in ancient times, if a son of your best poet was nevertheless a leader of men, they would make him king. I mean, they would have to kill a few people, but you would get there. Look, Plato spoke of this in one of his dialogues. I don't remember which one, but one of them. He says, he speaks of souls of iron, souls of bronze, souls of gold. And he does explain how souls of gold can actually emerge, of course they can, from among ordinary people. And the wisdom of the human community is to discover that, But that happens in, let's say, 1% of cases. I don't know, I'm just throwing out figures, 99% it doesn't. My point is here that we have to connect, we have to join in with what we are, which is what we are avoiding now in the world we live. It is as if to stun people enough so that they cannot maintain that continuity. That continuity with the past, which we always had until yesterday, until 200, 300 years ago. And now you might consider that when we go to developing countries, developing meaning developing into the same economy, the same political organization we have here in the West, and now we call them emerging countries. Okay. And then we go to their countries, full blast, with arms if needed, by fair means or foul, exporting our way of life, our democracy, which is natural to us, because it developed in our countries organically. But in their culture, their civilization is different, and it does not go necessarily in the same direction as ours, in the same direction that ours go. But nevertheless, purposefully change it and impose our democracy. But apart from all the economics and everything else, we are breaking that continuity that they have. We are breaking their organic, natural way of how things are, or how things have to move on or develop. It's like taking their souls out of them. Hence, so much suffering and so much killing. A fisherman in Bora Bora who's happily fishing there in his underpants now insists has to wear a suit and tie. I'm just being facetious. So much suffering caused by this. Well, imagine if they came to us and forced me to have to wear a Hawaiian pow skirt. Can you see the breakdown of who we are, how it happens? Breaking this continuity of traditions that truly give meaning to our lives. By continuity, I don't even mean doing exactly the same thing, okay? What I mean is, okay, you are a merchant, you're a businessman selling clothes. Why are you a businessman who sells clothes? Well, I sell clothes because, as it happens, my mother opened this small shop many years ago, and my grandfather had a haberdashery shop selling material. Remember those? And my great grandfather worked in a textile factory in Manchester. I don't mean the same, I mean a continuity of generations there. Our world does the opposite. More, they make us believe that doing the opposite is what brings us happiness. Oh, and what does your son do? Oh, my son, well, he's working in a multinational firm in Shanghai. Oh, and he's happy in Shanghai. Oh, yes, my goodness. Yes, the picture of bliss itself, working for a multinational company in Shanghai. Success? Yes, probably. Money? Yes, probably. Happy? That harmony between who you are and the roots where you come from and what you do is not there. They go, Shanghai, ooh, ah. But he's there in Shanghai, but he's not there in the riverbank of his small town or at the bottom of that hill. And you're not going to throw yourself in the river as you used to do as a child, not in Shanghai, in your underpants. If you think that what will give your son happiness and bliss is perhaps because you use, if that is what you think, perhaps you yourself have been so, I want you to consider it. Okay, it's my opinion. Never mind. But perhaps you have been so saturated that you are actually entering without realizing it in this post-human stage. Because what gives a human being harmony and happiness is you have to be rooted. I think I told you before where I was born. My region in northwestern Spain is called Galicia, but it's not the Galicia in Ukraine. Okay, it's the Galicia in the Atlantic, okay, above Portugal. And we traditionally, we were always peasants there, minifundia peasants. We never worked for a landlord. We each had our own little piece of land, and there you planted potatoes and a few vegetables. Okay. All right. During hard times from that region of Spain, people emigrated to what they call the Americas. They emigrated to America, but America is not the United States. America is Spanish America, or they call it now Latin America. Latin America because when the French and the English, but the French were there in the 19th century, and they were trying to change everything. The French decided that it should be Latin, because they were also thinking about that little place up in Canada. So Latin was better for the French, but they always called Iberian or Spanish, whatever. Okay. And a lot of people from my region imagine the misery that we had. We emigrated to America, especially Argentina, Cuba, and Venezuela. My father was born in Cuba. Two immigrants that met there, practically from the same village, one village next to the other. And he was born there. They returned to Spain when my father was 3. In that region, in the 19th century, we had a poet, a woman poet, poet, how do we say woman poet? Poetess? Okay, which is pretty much considered the mother of, our language. Okay. Her name is, beautiful name, Rosalia Castro. Castro is a typical surname from that region. Yes, Fidel Castro came from there. Together with Franco. I mean, we just cover the whole spectrum. I mean, okay, so her name is Rosalia de Castro. She wrote beautiful poetry about the people who emigrated away from their land, and points very painfully to that smile that immigrants have on their faces when they leave. They all are happy, smiling, huh? But she refers to that sad smile, the downhearted, the sad smile of the person who has to leave his land. Roots are there, very deep inside of us, to our land. And by the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and wept when we remembered. And this is what is truly human, to be rooted. something that during the Brexit thing, you remember, 10 years ago now, yeah? People wanted their land, their country, the way it had been, and the others were answering, oh, but the GDP and the this and that had nothing to do with that. And of course they stopped it. Yeah, they were going to do this and that. They didn't do anything. Okay, so, but root it to your soil and also to enjoy your property. And I, whenever the word property has been so soiled because of Marxist ideology, well, actually it was Proudhon, yes, the anarchist, in the 1830s. Property is theft. And the Marxists continue with the issue of private property, but by property, I mean what you have earned with your own sweat and tears, what you have made, what you can almost touch. I'm not talking about speculations and machinations of the City of London and Wall Street. What is yours? You made it. It's like the artist's product. It's like the artist. It's like the music from the composer. Chesterton said, actually, that it is essential to this feeling happy is your family and your property. These two institutions that actually give you roots, our roots. Institutions that provide us with a sense of belonging in our lives. And as a human being, as Aristotle said, a human being is a political being. By political, he did not mean what we understand today by politics, being with this political party, the other political party, you understand that. Yeah, nothing to do with that. It's the polis, the city, the community. It's a community person, a social being. And to be that, you need links. And those two important links are the family, and call it property, but it is the product of your work. And so what do we have today? Well, we are going around frantically pursuing happiness. But what is the state of our families? The family has been crushed. And this author was referring to his parents celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. And he wonders about those past generations. I must point out, because I think it's true, that in Catholic countries in Southern Europe, this change, this break with community has happened, but much, much later than in the northern countries. The change from community to that insistence on the individual came much later. Talking about past generations, in these southern countries, more of a Catholic cultural input, you find that when it came to you yourself, your own particular life, you were able to cope. Not just them, but let me finish my example. They were resigned. They had resignation about the arrows that life threw at them. And not necessarily arrows, but something that perhaps you didn't expect. Okay, another child. Oh, well, another mouth to feed kind of thing. But, okay, so Fine, but you adjusted and you coped. We know that we cope somehow whenever we have to face it. Yeah. So, in themselves, they were resigned to accept the tribulations or whatever of life. What they did not accept was the suffering of the neighbor. Then they went to help. Then they went to help out. I remember, I think I told you this before, when I was a child, um, we didn't have running water in our house. Okay, so you went to the spring. I think I told you this. We went to the fountain spring there, okay, and there was, with your bucket. It wasn't a bucket, it was a special thing for the water, okay? And you went there and you got the water. And then women carried it on their heads, which is the best way to do it. Men don't go to fetch water, and if they do, they carry it in their arms. They cannot. Men cannot carry water on their heads because men do not have balance for that. Okay, that's a long story. Okay, that is why in the Olympics, they have different exercises. Yes, on the bar you have the girls because they're testing their balance. Men, the boys have different exercises, when they go there and they lift their legs like that. Okay, they're measuring different things. Okay, anyway, but in that fountain spring, where we got the water, then that water went to the river. But in between the spring fountain and the river, there was a big pool there where women washed their clothes. And they would talk and talk and talk and talk. And I loved listening to them. And I remember I was very little, but I loved listening to their stories. I think my love of language, such as it is, or words or whatever, comes from those. I loved it. Okay. And they would tell things, and some things I understood and others I didn't understand. Sometimes, every now and then, someone will see me there at the top of the hill and say, "What are you doing here? Get out, get out. What are you doing listening to grown-ups?" And so on. I pretended to go and then I came back again. I loved listening to them. But one thing that I remember that they said was that someone, a man, had come home drunk and beat his wife. And so what they did, this is absolutely true, okay. What they did was to get together and they waited for him the next day. They waited for him like that. When he came home drunk, they beat him up. all of them, they beat him up. They gave him a beating. Now you're okay. So what I'm saying, this is true. This is true. But what I'm saying is that you could accept whatever came to you, but if it came to the community, you went and helped the best you could. I put it to you that they still had the sense of that valley of tears, accepting with resignation that life is like that, not a bed of roses. But now, let's go in pursuit of happiness, a life of pleasure, life daily offering you marvelous things. Look here, what you can purchase here. Look over there, what you can buy over there. You are unique. You are an individual. You are in your castle. No. Yes, life offers many times marvelous things. But when they are truly marvelous is when you have got there many times, often, through lots of sacrifices and much doing without, and with quite a lot of patience, and with a certain amount of suffering too. And then you have the result, and you see the result, and it's a wonderful, blissful reward then. And now we can buy things in a shop. But it's like any other pleasure. Now, after a moment of enjoyment, then comes the emptiness. We all know this. Intimately in our heart of hearts, we know this. Oh, but no, now we are more free, we are more independent. Yes. Yes, we are much more by ourselves. We are also much more alone, dare I say, much more lonely. And we find it difficult to keep relationships going. I think we deceive ourselves when we think that it is better. And to convince ourselves, we even convert what is pathological into normal. And if you go to any big city now, go to London, go to Paris, wherever you go, if you look in the main street somewhere, it's hard to find even one single establishment that is owned by a private individual or someone who said, I'm going to open a shop here, or a bar, or a hairdressing salon, or my own haberdashery shop. I live in Abingdon. We have one wonderful place. You can find any buttons, any threads, anything. Wonderful. So you don't find them. They're all franchises, multinationals. It's monstrous. It's ugly. We know this. We all want to be in our land with our people around us. And of course, it's not just we in our little circle. The circle will expand and interact with others, but it starts from that nucleus. And that is how civilization started. And we then expanded the circle from the roots to our relationships. And today, with the advance of technology, we could even expand more, but we need to be rooted. We need that center. We cannot do it at the expense of being uprooted. So we have to know who we are and not depend on illusions that, by the way, are induced by, among others, media propaganda with their sordid interests, ideological interest. By the way, listen, down below, after this is finished, I will put a link to something that you must watch. It's called The Swedish Theory of Love. It's a documentary, a very serious documentary, and you will find it in YouTube. Okay, and about how Sweden has changed, and it starts like this with pictures of people, a married couple, I suppose, it looks like the 50s, the 40s, the 50s, okay, having breakfast with 2 kids and mom and dad and so on. Okay. The voiceover starts like this. Everything was great in Sweden. The highest something, I can't see it, in Europe. There was progress thinking. We had trust in our leaders. Then the time came to take another step forward and free ourselves from old-fashioned, outdated family structures that still rule the way we lived, that made us dependent on each other. And this was based on an idea deeply rooted in Swedish values. They say independence. So in the winter of 1972, a group of politicians had a revolutionary vision of the future. An idea that, if implemented, would make life better for all of us. The time had come for women to be freed from men, to free the elderly from their children, the children from the elderly, to free teenagers from their parents. A manifesto was written, The Family of the Future. Watch it, watch it. Of course, you see, all this was, as we say, this is not a conspiracy, but this was all planned. The Rockefellers and later Soros were very much involved in the breakup of the family. See that documentary. So after you watch it, when you hear that Finland has the best possible educational system, that Sweden has the best social services anywhere, and all those vile inventions are nonsense, you will remember what you saw. The evidence of the lie. Watch the misery. Watch what has happened and what has become of a society that was perfectly healthy 40, 50 years ago. Watch the scum now. Crushed. Steamroller could pass over them and they would not react. We have entered this de-humanization period. Let's see how the French react about this latest coup involving Marie Le Pen, that she's not allowed to run in the next election, right? Let's see how the French react. My goodness, the French. If the French don't react, no one will. I mean, the French are revolutionaries per se. Yeah? But since 5 years ago, when they locked us all for 2 years, our spirit is weak. They, whoever they are, know that they can do pretty much anything. As long as they have the media, they are 24/7, anything. My point is, I don't have alternatives, but let's no longer continue to accept this. Let us resist, each of us in our own way, We have to rebuild ourselves from that search for our roots. In this documentary, you will see where people who have lost the sense of true affections go, where they end up. They lost the sense of true bonds. It is something devastating. And it bothered me, and it will probably bother you. Why? Because we still have that memory. Our grandchildren won't. There'll be numbers. And if not numbers themselves, they'll be treated as such. Horrid. What we are. That is what we have to find out, and then find agreement and harmony in what we are and what we do. We need to have this sense given to us by prudence, that old classical virtue, because they are putting obstacles in our way, more than the natural obstacles that life naturally brings. More obstacles because it's as if, goodness gracious, they wanted to destroy the human community. I think we have to resist as far as we can. As far as we can. And all the while, nevertheless, look into forming human bonds, looking for that community sense that we've lost. It might be the only thing that saves us. And then you will see how, in that situation, with that sense of community, what comes very naturally then is the sense of the transcendent. That has practically been drowned in us, suffocated. And it will start feeling natural again. It will start coming back, breathing again, a resuscitation of sorts. This is almost prohibited, banned to speak about it. But we all know that we all have within us a call to the immortal. We know it because we all yearn. That which is deepest in our soul is not something that can be satisfied fully here in this life. And so going back to how I started this talk, going back to that original nostalgia I talked about, that nostalgia of that paradise that we all carry inside, that we all long for, we have an inner life, a very deep inner life, and we have deep yearnings in our lives that we know, unfortunately, this life cannot answer, cannot fill. And however much money we have, however much we travel, however many boyfriends and girlfriends we have, that will never answer that yearning for the immortal. And that void, that inner yearning that we want to feel, that inner longing, ultimately, I am telling you, can only be filled by God. That is what I believe. So go ahead and laugh at me. But you know, I could be laughing too. When I see you, that you have convinced yourself that you can fill that void with going on vacation to Bora Bora. I'm laughing too. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.